How's it going, guys? This is Jazzman here of the Utah Jazz in 3&D. That stands for 3 and Defense, NBA 2K20 League. I just thought I would do this breakdown quick of the Western Conference and then eventually do a breakdown of the Eastern Conference. Just some of the off-season moves that have transpired over the course of the last few days. There's been, I think, 17 trades this off season, which is a absolutely stunning amount. Again, props to the rest of the trade board for figuring out those trades. Making sure nothing was imbalanced or unrealistic in any sort of way, or at least keep it as realistic as we can without restricting guys. So without any further ado, let's just jump right into this. So obviously the Western Conference was very competitive last year. We had teams like the Sacramento Kings, the Dallas Mavericks, Utah Jazz, the Portland Trailblazers, Golden State Warriors, San Antonio Spurs, New Orleans Pelicans, Memphis Grizzlies. Just a lot of teams that were fighting for playoff spots. Obviously, the Timberwolves were a CPU team for the majority of the year, so they didn't get a whole lot of love. But we also had teams like the LA Lakers, the LA Clippers, Phoenix Suns, Oklahoma City Thunder, and the Houston Rockets, all competing for that eighth seed. And then obviously the Denver Nuggets took a hard tumble after their trip to the conference finals, where they eventually lost to the NBA champion Dallas Mavericks back in season one. So let's go ahead and start with the bottom here. We'll take a look at Denver and see what transpired over the course of the last few weeks with them. And man, has a lot of changes happened with the Denver Nuggets. As you can see here, we look at their salary cap table. You'll notice there is a big name no longer here in Denver. Actually, a couple big names. Most notably Nikola Jokic, perennial MVP candidate, probably top two, top three center in the NBA. Absolute superstar. He has been traded to the Atlanta Hawks, and you're looking at the returns right here. John Collins, he's an absolutely athletic forward. He can play center. He's a little undersized at the five, but he definitely makes up for it with that athleticism that he brings to the table. And not only that, but he's also very skilled. He can shoot the three ball, space out the floor. He can slash inside with the best of them. He's a very solid rebounder, great interior presence on defense. He's a really good pickup for the Nuggets, in place of Jokic. So the Nuggets also, in that Jokic deal, they ended up picking up DeAndre Hunter, who's also very talented forward, great size on the wings. He's about 6'7", 228 pounds, good shooter, great athleticism. And this is only going to be his third year, so that's always the jumping point when it comes to stars in the NBA, is that third season. Very rarely do you see guys that are kind of mediocre or average the first year and then they jump up into an absolute star in their second season. Usually it takes a couple years until they become that type of guy. You look at guys like Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, guys like them. They usually play their role the first few years. So DeAndre Hunter, with this team, has a very strong chance of having a breakout year. He could be a sleeper pick for an all-star if everything goes according to plan for Denver. Otherwise, you have in that Jokic trade, you have Cam Reddish coming to the Nuggets. Reddish will also be undergoing his third season in the NBA as well. As you can see, he started off very promising. 12 points a game, shooting 50, 36, 83, shooting splits. He really needs to work on his playmaking here, especially if he's going to be at the 2 guard for Denver, because they traded away Jamal Murray and Will Barton, both of their starting guards. So Reddish is going to have he's going to have a lot on his plate being in that backcourt. And really, if he doesn't improve that playmaking, I'm not sure if he'll be able to take that next step or not. So hopefully he can clean up the turnovers, work the ball around a bit while also still being that elite shooter on the perimeter. And again, this is another guy with standout athleticism. That's one main theme with this Nuggets team is athleticism, youth and athleticism. You see the oldest player on the team is Langston Galloway, who will likely not see much, if any, time on the floor unless it's an emergency due to injury or if players just aren't playing up to expectations. Also in that deal, Maker, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and I hope Thawne doesn't beat me the fuck up, but Maker, he was kind of a reach in this draft. He was projected to be about a mid-20s pick, very late first round, and he was picked 15th, just outside of the lottery to Atlanta. And after this trade, you really see that it makes a lot of sense here for Atlanta to take him. He's, a very upside-heavy guy. He's not going to come in and make a difference right away. But the hope there for Denver now, after acquiring him in that Jokic trade, is that he can develop and grow into a lockdown center in the middle that can also space the floor, and he can handle a bit. He's a lot like his older brother Thawne, who can kind of do a little bit of everything on the court, but his main strength is obviously his length and shooting ability. So hopefully he can round out his game fairly early and be a big impact player for this team. So with that said, the Nuggets also picked up Buddy Hield in that trade for Jamal Murray, which sent Murray to the Knicks. And Hield is going to be counted on to be the leader in Denver for this very young squad. You see, he's 28. He's getting paid, big money. He's an absolutely deadly shooter. You can't leave him open. He can play make a little bit, not that great of a playmaker, but he's really just like a CJ McCollum type of guy. Just give him the ball, let him shoot. Like that's his role. That's what his role has been for the past 3 or 4 years, and that's what it's going to continue to be in Denver. Is just an elite marksman along the perimeter. There were concerns with Hield about his contract. He's getting $24 million a year, just a little over $24 million, and I just don't know if he's that type of guy that can really shoot. Well, he can shoot well, but I don't know if his shooting is enough to make up for that contract, because really, aside from his shooting, he doesn't really bring a whole lot to the table. He's a pretty one-dimensional guy, not a very good defender, not a good playmaker. He can score inside a little bit, but that's not really his bread and butter. Obviously, he's just an elite shooter. But the biggest gain for the Nuggets this offseason, is Jaylen Johnson. Jaylen Johnson is a very, very intriguing prospect. Obviously, his athleticism is off the charts. But the Nuggets, they traded up from, I believe, the 6th pick all the way up to number 2. Everybody was expecting Denver to take Jalen Green, but they didn't. They shocked the 3-and-D world. They took Jaylen Johnson, number 2 overall, out of Duke. And he is, a lot like Reddish and Hunter in that he's a very athletic perimeter player along the wing. Great size, but his shooting ability does leave a bit to be desired. Obviously, you see he's not nearly the shooter that Reddish and DeAndre Hunter are. But really, the main thing here is he's just very high upside guy. If he pans out, we're going to be looking back on that trade, and we're going to be praising the GM Rowe for making such a bold move and getting a guy like Jaylen Johnson. I mean, his potential is off the charts. The only question is, can he get there, and is he skilled enough once he gets there to not be a one-dimensional guy where the only thing he can do is slash inside and score in transition. He's going to need to be able to score in a half-court setting. Whether that be coming off screens along the perimeter for jumpers, or back cuts. Any sort of cutter action, or even in the pick and roll with him handling a bit, because he does have some pretty good ball skills to him. It's just a very risky pick. And then the one of the few returning members of the Nuggets is Michael Porter Jr. As you can see, Porter really had a huge year. And of course, this is after I say nobody really jumps off to superstardom after 1 year of being, average to above average, and then nobody just becomes that superstar in year 2. Which with Porter, this is technically going to be his 4th season. As you can see, his contract is up after this year. He'll be a restricted free agent. Denver's going to have to shell out a ton of money to keep him, because I'm sure he's going to garner a lot of interest in the next offseason, next summer. And the thing with him, he's got great size, 6'10", 218 pounds. He's a little thin, but he uses that size to his advantage by shooting over top of defenders, slashing inside, finishing over guys. He's not quite the defender that you would hope he would be, but he makes up for it with his scoring ability, as well as his ability to crash the glass if needed. I think he is going to see a bit of a drop-off this year, just because I don't think his numbers last season are really all that sustainable, because I just don't know if this team is going to have enough touches for a guy like Porter to score 28 points a game again. I just don't see it happening, but if it does, it does, and then Porter could very well be on his way to superstardom in the NBA. He has a game a lot like Kevin Durant, who is one of the best scorers in NBA history. Otherwise, another big pickup for the Nuggets is Donte Dee Vincenzo. Dee Vincenzo has kind of been a middle of the road guy in Milwaukee. Denver's kind of taken a risk in getting him, because they dealt Aaron Gordon, who really hadn't worked out well at all in Denver, and they gave up Gary Harris for Aaron Gordon. So the hope here is that DiVincenzo can kind of step in. I want to say he's going to be probably their starting point guard. So Denver's hoping that he can step in and have a breakout season as a starting point guard. I mean, he has all the tools. He's a solid playmaker, solid shooter. He's an outstanding athlete. I mean, deceptively athletic, real lunch pail kind of guy, first in, last out, all the stereotypes. But he's really an outstanding athlete, and really a pretty solid defender as well for for his position. Great size at 6'4". He could be one of the better two-way point guards in the league if he pans out. And again, he's another guy that's going to be expiring at the end of the season. He'll be, again, a restricted free agent like Porter. So Denver's going to have some decisions here. You take a look at their salary table. Really, the only guys that they're giving big money to is John Collins and Buddy Hield, which John Collins obviously signed the max deal with Atlanta. Initially, it was the Charlotte Hornets that gave John Collins a max offer sheet, which he was well on his way to signing. But Atlanta came in after they got Paul George. They came in, signed John Collins to that max deal, and then they promptly traded him for superstar Nikola Jokic. So kind of a roller coaster of emotions for John Collins. He's been with Atlanta for all 4 seasons of his career so far. Thought he might have been going to Charlotte, if anything, or at least staying with Atlanta. Be a big piece there with Trae Young and Paul George. But it just wasn't in the cards. He's now in Denver, where he has a chance to really become the man there. Right now, he's definitely the most well-rounded player on this roster, aside from maybe Dee Vincenzo, just because Dee Vincenzo is really just a jack-of-all-trades kind of guy. But Collins, he's gonna be primed for a big year here. We'll see if he can make it happen. And next in the Northwest Division, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder, who were 9-16 last season. They played 25 out of 29 games. And really, OKC is a pretty intriguing team. Their defense wasn't all that spectacular last season, so that's something that they really came into this offseason trying to address. And man, did they address it. They got Miles Turner from Indiana for, I believe, 2 first-rounders and a second-round draft pick. Turner is going to be a revolution for this Oklahoma City team. They finally get a great defensive big man, and not only is he just a defensive big man, but you can see he's a very, very gifted shooter for the 5 spot. You just don't see many centers with his size and defensive ability able to shoot the 3 ball the way he does. And they got him at a pretty solid contract. He's making $18 million a year this year and $18 next year. And then he'll be an unrestricted free agent. But he's entering the prime of his career. He's still only 25, so he can still improve yet, which I'm assuming he most likely will be improving, especially playing in OKC along guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. SGA, he's a very gifted scorer. He's really took that step in season 1, jumping up to about 24 points a game, shooting very efficiently from inside the arc and out, as well as the free throw line. But one thing you would like to see improve with SGA is his assist numbers, basically. He definitely has the ability to be, a guy that averages about 6-7 assists, in that James Harden type of role as a 2 guard, where he's pretty ball dominant, really, dictating the action. But you just really don't get the raw assist numbers with SGA that you would hope for. So hopefully he makes that next step, because really that's about the only thing lacking in his game right now. I mean, he's an excellent defender at the 2 guard, excellent scorer. You just hope that he can kind of become a little bit better playmaking wise, and find a way to to get his teammates the ball and score. But also coming back, you have Danilo Gallinari. Simply put, Gallinari is one of the elite shooters in the league still today. He's 32. He'll be entering his 13th season in the NBA. Former 6th overall draft pick in 2008. And the thing with Gallinari is his not only versatility and his ability to shoot the ball, but his size as well. He's 6'10", 230 pounds. He's really just a gifted scorer. He can score at all three levels, whether that be inside using his size and strength down low, whether that be in the mid-range, or on the three-point line. You know, he's tall enough that he can shoot over defenders at will, and he's just a very savvy vet. Been around a long time. He can really he's a really valuable asset to this Thunder squad. And then you have Derek White. Derek White just got re-signed by the Thunder this offseason. Got about $19 million per year after all was said and done. 4-year deal, has a player option for his last year. And White is one of those two-way guards that really any team would love to have. He's a pretty good shooter, not elite, but very, very good, especially from the three-point line. You really can't leave this guy open. He's got good size at 6'4", 190, starting point guard for the Thunder last season, and he really broke out with about 12.5 points a game and 5 assists. The thing that you want from White is the ability to play off ball a little bit more. When you have a guy like SGA, you want him to have the ball the majority of the time, whether that be creating for himself or creating for others. So really, a guy like White should be the prototype point guard to pair along with SGA. You know, he's a tremendous athlete, has good size, excellent defender, and he can shoot and space the floor. So hopefully White keeps improving for OKC. He's entering the prime of his career now, still just 27 years old. And then in that front court, along with Miles Turner, you have Christian Wood. Wood is just really one of the more underrated guys in the league today. He's only 25, on a pretty solid deal at $11.6 million this year, and then $12.2 million next year if he opts into his player option. But Wood is just one of those guys that's really just an athletic specimen. At 6'10", 214, he's a little thin, but he's a lot stronger than he lets on. And really, he's a prototype big man in today's league. He can protect the rim, crash the glass, and he can also shoot the three ball with the best of them at the 4 spot. So Christian Wood really is one of the best pairings that you could have with Miles Turner. Turner's a defensive stalwart. He's got defensive play of the year ability with his defensive IQ, shot blocking instincts. So Wood is really a pretty solid guy to pair along with him. Wood is tremendous on defense in his own right. He's also a pretty solid rim protector, and thanks to his athleticism and length, he's a very rangy defender. He can help from pretty much the opposite corner, come along and block a layup. I mean, he's an athletic freak for his size. So him and Turner should really be one of the more entertaining and productive front courts in the NBA. Really, this entire starting lineup, whether they start Gallinari, Greg Brown, who they just drafted 7th overall this year, whether they start Kevin Huerter for his shooting, or even Jaden McDaniels for his scoring ability and his size. Really, any of those guys can start at the 3 spot for OKC, and they'd still be a pretty tough out for any team. I mean, they were They were about the eighth seed. No, they were the ninth or 10th seed, I want to say, last season. Like I said, they were what, 9-16, something like that. But really, you hope OKC can keep improving and keep getting better. They really should be a playoff team this season. With internal development here, you have SGA, only 23 years old and still getting better. You have Derek White coming back, another year of continuity with this team. Miles Turner still only 25. Christian Wood is only 25. You got the rookies and Greg Brown. You got another rookie in Ibu Diankubaji, who they're very excited about in OKC. He's very rangy, great rim protector as well. He'll be a tremendous backup five, I think, for the Thunder this season. Otherwise, they also brought in Jalen Brunson from the Dallas Mavericks. He'll be a very solid option off the bench for OKC, and OKC's linked to Chris Paul. Who knows if they're bringing him back or not, but even if they do, you can still play a guy like Brunson next to Paul as long as they really aren't getting torched defensively. They're a little similar as players, just lights out mid-range players, shorter, kind of stocky, but really savvy in the pick and roll. So I think Brunson can be a nice pickup for OKC. And next in the Northwest Division is the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota got off to a pretty hot start last season at 11-2. Until they suddenly lost ownership and changed ownership after being owned by the NBA for a while. They finally found a new owner in the offseason, but unfortunately, the turmoil surrounding the ownership kind of did a number on this team. They ended up falling out of the playoff race after they were 11-2. So I mean, they were cruising. I think their two losses were the Utah Jazz and I want to say the Sacramento Kings. But Minnesota was really solid to start last year, and you hope that they can kind of bring that back. Obviously, they still have Karl-Anthony Towns, one of the best centers in the league, probably the best offensive center in the league. I mean, this guy scores and shoots like a shooting guard. He moves like a small forward, and he can finish inside like a true big man. Towns, he's 6'11", 250. He's the first overall pick in 2015, and he's really just coming into his prime now. He's only 25, so he can still improve. But you hope to see most of that improvement come on the defensive end. He's a decent defender inside, not as good of a defender as people would expect him to be after his freshman season at Kentucky. He was really one of the better defensive big men that we had seen at the college level. We don't know if that was just due to his height or what, but Towns really has some room to improve on the defensive end, so you hope that comes this year while he still maintains that offensive output. They still bring back D'Angelo Russell. Russell's one of the premier scoring guards in the league. He took a bit of a downswing last season coming to Minnesota, but you hope that that having that second year with the Timberwolves will help him stabilize his scoring while keeping his shooting numbers efficient, because he was still a very efficient shooter last season for the Timberwolves. His production was just a bit low, a little more so than normal. I mean, he had scored 21 a game his last two seasons up until this past year, and then he dropped down to just a shy of 17 points a game. So you hope that Russell can get back on track a bit, and I'm sure a part of it has something to do with playing second fiddle to Karl-Anthony Towns. So you hope those two can kind of mesh a little better on the offensive end. There's really no reason to believe that both of them can't coexist in an offense. Otherwise, there's Robert Covington coming back. He's an expiring this year at just shy of 13 million. And his offensive numbers also have taken a bit of a downturn. But really, the thing that you like most with him is his elite perimeter defense. I mean, this guy is one of the premier defenders along the perimeter, while also still being a viable option on offense. You know, he can still shoot threes from really anywhere on the court, and his length really allows him to get a little crafty over over the top finishes on top of guys. So you hope Covington can kind of come back a little bit offensively, but the defense should still be there. You know, he's the best defender on this team, simply put. So he's tremendously valuable to Minnesota right now. And then you have Josh Okogie. Okogie, you know, he's kind of in the same mold as Covington, not as long, but a bit more athletic. You hope that his shooting can still improve a bit, because he's like Covington, he's a tremendous defender, just an absolute dog on defense. He's only 6'4", but he can play that 3 spot, sometimes even the 4, thanks to his strength and defensive instincts. So you hope Okogie can keep taking that next step toward being an elite two-way player in this league. You know, he's not gonna be a Paul George, a Kawhi Leonard, Victor Oladipo, anything like that, but he could be, you know, a very good lockdown on defense guy, and then come down on the other side, and you know, he's just a shooter, a guy that you can't leave open, which that role is very important to have when you have two isolation heavy guys like Karl-Anthony Towns and Angelo Russell, who are trying to score for themselves. So you really need guys that the defense can't sag off of and help on Towns and Russell, and hopefully Okogie can kind of keep growing into that guy. He's still only 22. This will be his 4th season in the league. So hopefully he takes that next step. Otherwise, there's Jarrett Culver. Culver was the 6th pick of the 2019 draft, and he could see a starting role here with Minnesota this season. He's very versatile. He can play the point guard or the 2-guard spot, whether that be next to Russell, next to Okogie, whichever. But he's a very solid scorer. Great size at 6'6". You know, he could be an SGA type of player if he's able to put it all together. We have yet to see it, but it could happen. He has all the tools offensively to become a star. And then there's Amari Spelman. Spelman was I believe, a signing this season, but I could be wrong. Spelman is oh no, he played last season for them. Spelman, he's pretty stout, kind of Maurice Spates type of player, in which he's short for a center, but his strength makes up for it on the defensive end. It allows him not to get pushed around on the glass or inside in the post. But he can come down on the other end, and he'll shoot right in your face. He's an incredible shooter for a center. So really, he could play next to either Towns or Covington or whoever, Naz Reid even, in that front court, and be a pretty productive player, thanks to his shooting and his size and strength. Then there's Jake Layman. Layman likes like Spellman, is a 6'8" forward. Um, Obviously not as heavy as Spellman, uh, but Layman is a solid shooter, decent scorer for his size. He could have a career kind of like a Bojan Bogdanovic. I mean, it's starting to get a little too late for him. He really needs to turn it around now. But he has the ability to become, a 12 point per game guy with this size and shooting ability. I mean, somebody that's 6'8" that can shoot 40% from three, they're always going to have a spot in this league, and a lot of them are going to have starting spots in this league. So you hope Jake Layman can improve a bit in Minnesota. Um, Also coming back is Naz Reid, um, and then also Minnesota's 14th pick in 2020, Tyrese Halliburton. Halliburton really had a pretty strong showing his rookie season, starting at point guard. He was 12 points per game. He has good size at 6'5", and then good three-point shooting ability. Um, Really not much of a defender. You hope that he can improve on that end. I mean, a lot of times either you have it or you don't, and right now it looks like he doesn't have it. But he's an elite playmaker, and he's still only 21, so he's still putting it all together here. So hopefully he can have a pretty strong season as a sophomore. Rounding out the Timberwolves is Jacob Evans, former Warrior, 28th overall pick in 2018. Really hasn't seen a whole lot of playing time in his short career. Hopefully he can break that glass ceiling and crack the rotation. And then there's Jalen Knoll, the 13th overall pick in 2019 of the second round, excuse me. Um, and he's another combo guard, 6'4", decent shooter as far as I know. Yep, decent shooter. Uh, Really not a whole lot's known about Knoll. I mean, he's only 22, so he could still get better. Minnesota did lose Montrezl Harrell to free agency. Harrell did sign with the Cavaliers this offseason, and he was a pretty solid piece for Minnesota. He only signed a 1-year deal after the Clippers were not able to bring him back. Um, but Harrell is he's a solid guy. I mean, really tough loss for Minnesota because it definitely leaves them thin at the 4 spot. You don't know if they're gonna move Spellman to the 4 spot, which I don't know if he's quick enough along the perimeter to be able to handle that on defense, or if you start Naz Reid at the 4, or even Robert Covington or Josh Okogie. Um, it might be down to one of those two guys to play the 4 next to Towns, and then if that happens, it leaves your interior defense a little weak, just because Towns isn't the greatest rim protector in the NBA. I mean, he's solid, but not solid enough to where he can be the lone big man in a small ball lineup, in my opinion. So hopefully the Timberwolves can kind of put it together here and have a strong season as they undergo new ownership here in 3&D. And next up in the Northwest Division is the Portland Trailblazers. Portland had another strong year last year. They were the 4th seed in the West at 14-12. Portland, they kept their core intact for the most part. From last season, they still have Dame Lillard, Blake Griffin, Yusuf Nurkic, Justice Winslow, and then they added Tomas Satoransky. They traded JJ Redick for Sato. They got Rodney Hood coming back, though there's been rumors of him being on the block. He could be on the move here before the off-season wraps up. They still have Nasir Little. Anthony Simmons could be another guy that kind of cracks, breaks through and becomes, a solid starting option at the 2 guard spot next to Dame Lillard, kind of in the same vein that CJ McCollum did, where McCollum kind of rode the bench for a few years, really honed his craft, became a very excellent scorer. Anthony Simons is a little bit better on defense than McCollum is, so you hope that that he can coexist with Damian Lillard a little bit better if he were to play the two guard spot. Also coming back is Malik Beasley. Beasley was traded for, I believe. No, he was signed in the last summer in the off season. He had a pretty strong year at 10 and a half points. He was a starting two guard, I believe, next to Dame Lillard, and he could even regain that starter spot again. He still got a 3-year deal with the team, with his last season being a player option for $10.28 million. And he's only 24, so he can still improve. This will be his 6th year in the league already, and he's just 24 years old. So he's really yet to enter his prime. So he can definitely improve and keep getting better and better as the years go by. A rookie that Portland picked up in the draft was one that a lot of, I'm sure, teams picking in the 20s hoped would slip, but he got picked right at 20, and this is Jeremiah Robinson Earl. He's a great shooter, 6'9", 232 pounds, good size. He's not that good of a defender, pretty poor defender, but he can crash the glass and help on the boards a bit, help Nurkic and Blake Griffin out. He's a pretty solid athlete for a guy his size. So you hope that he can come in and be a force offensively off the bench for Portland. Also is Jaden Springer, no relation to Jerry Springer. Jaden was also picked in the 2021 draft. He was 24th overall, just 18 years old. I mean, this kid, he could be something. I mean, he's a pretty solid shooter, good athlete. He can finish over top of guys. I mean, he's 6'6", good size. So really, all the tools are there for Springer to become a very good NBA rotation player as long as he puts it together. And he's going to have a lot of time here as he's just 18. Portland also traded for Dylan Windler from the Cavaliers. Windler really hasn't seen a whole lot of playing time in his short career thus far. He'll be buried a bit on the depth chart behind Springer, Rodney Hood, Simons, Malik Beasley, Justice Winslow, Satoransky. I mean, it's going to be tough for a guy like Windler to break the rotation here and get some minutes. And then finally, there's Mamadi Diakite. I'm just gonna call him Mamadi. He's a second-year guy. I really don't know a whole lot about him. He was picked in the 16th overall spot in the second round of 2020. Decent size, 6'9", can stretch to the 5 spot in some small ball lineups, but you really don't want him playing a whole lot of minutes there. We'll see if he can make any improvements and become an NBA level player at this point. So Portland was the 4th seed last season. You hope that they can build upon that year. They had a very strong showing. They beat the Pelicans in the first round and then took the Sacramento Kings, the 1-seed Kings, to the absolute limit. They won a game against them before losing the 3-game series. So Portland, you hope, can take it to that next step and make it at least to the conference finals this season, if not the NBA finals. So Portland, they're in a good spot right now. Their window's just open. I mean, they got Blake Griffin at 32. He just re-signed. He's at 37.66 million this year, 35.78 next year, and then 33.89 in 23-24. Dame Lillard getting that supermax deal, just absolutely raking in the cash. So Portland, they're a little hampered by the salary cap right now. So you hope that this is the year for Portland. I mean, they have a very strong supporting cast. Um, Two very good stars in Dame Lillard and Blake Griffin, a great defensive anchor in Yusuf Nurkic, and then some very good young guys like Justice Winslow and Nazir Little, Anthony Simons, Malik Beasley. So really, all the pieces are here for Portland to make a strong push in the playoffs. And then finally, we have my Utah Jazz. The Jazz really kind of bringing it back this year for the most part. I mean, we bring back Donovan Mitchell, just an absolute stud on the offensive end and no slouch on the defensive end either. He's only 6'1" at the 2-yard spot, but his 6'10" wingspan more than makes up for it and allows him to be a force on the defensive end. Even playing some small ball minutes at the 3. So you hope Mitchell can keep honing his craft, becoming a better and better player every season. He just got a max deal this offseason, so he's definitely making all the money. I mean, he is flushed with cash. So you hope Mitchell can keep grinding, keep improving his game, and just really becoming a more efficient scorer at that 2-guard spot. And then there's Rudy Gobert. Gobert was kind of rumored to be leaving the Jazz this offseason. There's rumors that he was going to sign with the Dallas Mavericks, who beat the Jazz in the second round of the playoffs. And he would have gone to join Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis, which would have been an absolutely hellacious front court to play against, having a 7-1 center and a 7-3 power forward. Kristaps with his shooting ability and his size, ability to defend down low. And then obviously Gobert is the reigning Defensive Player of the Year. He's won the award 3 times now. Just one of the elite big men of the league. Great rim runner, probably the best rim runner in the NBA right now. And then the best paint protector as well. He led the league in rebounds last year too. And he's just really what you ask for in a big man. He does all the little things. He signed a humongous deal, 5 years with the Jazz, to come back, despite some rumors of chemistry problems with Donovan Mitchell, still lingering from coronavirus in 2020. So hopefully those two can keep things going for the Jazz as far as their on-court relationship goes, because they're really a dynamic duo. Mitchell being the superstar guard, Gobert being the superstar big man. So really everything revolves around those two. But then the Jazz didn't stop there by bringing those two guys. They also brought in an old flame in Gordon Hayward. Hayward famously left the Jazz in 2017, bolted for the Boston Celtics on the 4th of July of 2017. The Jazz had developed him for 7 years, turned him into an all-star, and then he bolted to play for his college head coach from Butler, Brad Stevens. And he played 6 minutes in the 2018 season and broke his leg in horrendous fashion. and it really has struggled to come back since then. He did receive another big contract from the Celtics, almost out of good faith, in hopes that he can return back to form, but it just didn't happen. Boston was looking to unload that contract this offseason, and the Jazz ended up letting bygones be bygones, and they traded forward Bojan Bogdanovic as well as Royce O'Neal this season. So two stalwarts for the Jazz on the perimeter are gone, and they bring back Gordon Hayward. Um, Hopefully he can revitalize his career with the Jazz. Um, he has a great relationship with head coach Quinn Snyder. He often credits Snyder for turning him into an all-star and helping him become an elite offensive player. And you hope that he can bring that elite efficiency back with him to Utah, um, because this is a Jazz team that really needs a strong second option to go along with Donovan Mitchell. And hopefully Hayward is that type of player. Um, in the Royce O'Neal trade, Utah ended up picking up Collin Sexton from the Cleveland Cavaliers. Sexton is a very young guy, 22, and he's an absolute dynamite point guard. I mean, this guy is one of the fastest players in the league. Him and Donovan Mitchell, when they're on the floor together, they might be the fastest backcourt in the NBA today. Sexton, just 22, coming into his fourth season, so he'll be a restricted free agent at the end of the year. But he could step into either the starting point guard spot and take Rubio's spot, play alongside Donovan Mitchell, or he could come off the bench and be a spark plug for 28 minutes a night. Um, Really, in either role, I'm sure he's going to be successful. Um, really, a great pickup for the Jazz here as they gain an elite athlete in Collin Sexton. He can defend well, he can shoot, he can score, play make, he can even rebound a bit. So Sexton, really a good pickup for the Jazz here. Also coming back is Joe Ingles. Ingles was rumored to be traded this offseason to clear some cap space to allow the Jazz to go after some more free agents after the Sexton and Hayward deals. But Ingles ended up not being traded. Sources say that Utah is looking to keep Ingles and use him either in a starting role or off the bench. They value his shooting and his defense, his leadership, his locker room presence. Just a real glue guy, Joe Ingles is. I mean, the guy started at point guard last season for half the season. And really, they value that expiring contract as well. 14 million off the books after this season. So Utah is really looking to hang on to Ingles there. They also bring back Ricky Rubio. They traded for Rubio midway through last season from Phoenix. He was kind of struggling with the Suns, struggling to find a role a bit, especially with the drafting of LaMelo Ball. Rubio really came back with grace to the Jazz. He hit a game winner in the series against San Antonio in the first round, where the Jazz were down 2, I believe, on the road in San Antonio. Rubio came down and drilled a three-point shot with like .2 left after he made it. So Rubio really came back strong. He averaged, I think, 16 and 10 in the playoffs. He came back right into that starting role. The chemistry with Donovan Mitchell was right there again. Very good defensive backcourt. And again, like Sexton, he could come off the bench as well and still be just as valuable thanks to his floor general tendencies and his timely shot making and defense. Joining the Jazz is Dwight Howard. Dwight is 35, entering his 18th season, but still a pretty strong backup center in the league. He can definitely uh, step in for Gobert if Gobert has foul trouble, if he's winded or whatever. He can play next to Thawne Maker. He can play next to Gordon Hayward in the front court, Joe Ingles in the front court, or really any free agent that the Jazz pick up that would play the 4 spot. Dwight can really mesh with. He's a great rim runner, good rim protector, good rebounder. Um, Dwight can still get it done, and he signed on a 1-year deal for 5.85 million. He has the option to come back at 6.14 million next year, and we'll see if he takes that. Um, Rounding out the Jazz rotation, you got Mie Oni. Oni has some high expectations this season. They let Royce O'Neal go to hope that Oni can kind of step into that role and provide a little bit more offense than O'Neal had. He's not quite the defender that O'Neal is, but Oni can really fill it up. He's got good size at the 2 guard spot. He can play the 3. And with his handles improving, he could even play the 1 in some lineups if need be, which we really won't have to see that with the 3 guards listed ahead of him. But Oni, very strong player, can shoot, finish inside, and he can defend a little bit. So the Jazz are hoping that he makes the most of his minutes this year. And then returning to the Jazz is Thawne Maker. Thawne is in his 2nd year of his 3-year contract with the Jazz, where he put up a career high 12 points and 8.5 rebounds and 1.5 blocks a game. He played next to Rudy Gobert in the front court, which proved to be a very formidable duo. Both guys are 7-footers, and Thawne really kind of reminds Rudy of himself when he was younger. Just a beanpole, real just skinny guy, string bean. But Thawne has that shooting ability, the ball handling ability that makes him so unique for a guy his size, and he still became an elite defender last season next to Gobert, and really made the most of his opportunity with the Jazz. He'll definitely be starting at the 4 spot again this year. And then finally, we have Trendon Watford, the 27th pick of the 2020 draft last season. Watford really didn't get a whole lot of playing time last year. Not sure if there's going to be the minutes available for him this season either, with the signing of Dwight Howard, and then Gordon Hayward coming in as well. He'll likely be playing some of his minutes at the 4. And then there's also some free agents that the Jazz are targeting that could be the 4 spot as well. So Watford really just another year of learning, getting experience, and developing as a player. So that wraps up the Northwest or North Best division for 3&D. We have 5 very competitive teams in this division. A lot of youth, a lot of athleticism, some star power, and then 2 championship contenders in the Portland Trailblazers and the Utah Jazz. And then who knows, the Oklahoma City Thunder could drastically improve. They could be right there as well. They have all the right pieces. The Timberwolves, they have a great starting foundation in Russell and Cat. They just need to surround them with the right players. And then the Denver Nuggets, obviously the most youthful squad in the NBA. They'll be a tough out too with their athleticism, their high motors. they're going to be trying to run some teams out of the gym. I mean, it's going to be a track and field meet there. So, yeah, hopefully the Northwest keeps doing what they're doing, and building and getting better and better. But yeah, go Jazz.